Hello, I'm Sam Atkinson, president of Cassida and member of Cassida's executive board of directors. And it is my pleasure today to sit down with Scottie Rodgers, the director of communications at the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic. Um, Scottie, so good to sit down with you and talk with you. And welcome to Through My Lens.
Well, Sam, thanks for doing this. I'm glad that we were able to sit down and have this conversation. I wanted to sit down with you to kind of talk about everything. We've been friends for a long time, so this is going to be a great conversation.
Yeah, and as I say, this is an opportunity to get to know more about Scottie and his experiences from growing up to working in the SID field to where you are today, Scottie, and there in Dallas. As you just alluded to, you and I go way back. It's about 15 years or so, and you always bring so much positivity and high energy. You are a true leader and a friend to all. So, first question would just be like, what makes you so high energy and ready to go every day? It seems like.
It's people. People make me so excited. I'm a people person. I think I've drawn into that. I don't know if I necessarily was that from growing up. I was always around a lot of different people. I grew up in a household with two brothers and two sisters with my mom and dad. So it was a pretty big house from that standpoint. It wasn't a huge house in space wise, but it was we were our parents were always around, and we were always active with the various things that everybody was doing. There's a 4 year age gap to me and my um, sister that is closest to me in age. So I was always kind of the little one following them around with all the things they were doing. But I was able to carve my own way, and just fell into this world of sports, going back to high school, and then it just kind of blossomed from there.
Now, you grew up in Atmore, Alabama, right down there on the Florida border in southern Alabama. Can you tell me a little bit more about your childhood and also kind of maybe highlight, what was the best part of growing up where you did?
I grew up in a small town, and I have an affinity for small town living. My parents were not anybody. My dad was a security guard at a carpet factory, retired Air Force. My mom was a homemaker for the most part. She did some things, but we had I would say a middle class house. We were always there was never anything that was an issue. My parents were very I wouldn't say very strict, but they were very strong as it relates to how you needed to carry yourself and how you needed to treat other people. It was always with respect. It was always yes sir, yes ma'am, no sir, no ma'am. Whether it's them or any of the elders that you dealt with. So they instilled in us early on that having a quality lifestyle was really important. So my mom didn't play around. My dad he was a talker, and I probably got a lot of that from him. But he was pretty stern at times, but he just really wanted you to do things a certain way. And my mom was always the one that's trying to help everybody, take care of everybody. She definitely was great about that. Miss them both every day. And my two sisters still live in my hometown. I got two of my brothers that I grew up with, and I got a third brother that I knew and was around when he came to visit. But it was just a solid upbringing. You know, we in my high school. One of the biggest things that got me going was that band was a big thing in my house because my both of my sisters were in the flat corps. Both of my brothers were drummers in the band. I ended up being a drummer in the band. So at an early age, that became something. And going to high school football games, I remember going to high school football games in a small town. That's a big deal. And then obviously the band performances, and even going to see them perform at contests and things like that.
Now, you stayed in state for college and you went to University of Alabama. Was that an easy decision for you? And how were those years for you in Tuscaloosa?
Formative. It was unbelievable. I grew up an Alabama fan. I never thought that I would get the opportunity to go to school there. When I applied in my junior year, when you can finally apply and put all your information in, I got in. I was like, that's where I'm going. And I really went there honestly to potentially join the band, join the Million Dollar Band. That was something I was going to do. I started writing for my hometown paper, writing sports, my senior year of high school. And I actually was going to be in the band and go to school for math and science. But somehow or another, I started working in sports information and majored in journalism and minored in history. So I don't know. It just kind of all happened. It all flowed from high school and having a great experience working on our student paper uh, at the high school, and that turned in writing for the Atmore Advance, which was one of the papers in town. It only came out twice a week on Wednesdays and Sundays, so there was like one page for sports. So I learned a lot of things about writing and just the process of doing that, and it just turned into when I decided to declare my major officially at Alabama. I had done a minority journalism workshop. They call it something else now, but the summer before my freshman year, and I went there for 2 weeks. It's basically journalism camp, for lack of a better term, and it was a great 2 week experience. And I got very, very lucky. I ended up winning best story and best layout design, and I guess I realized at that point maybe majoring in journalism might be the way for me to go. And that's what I did. And everything just kind of went from there.
Let's go from there. You graduate from the University of Alabama, and you start working with the SEC in the Southeastern Conference. How did you get into that, and how did that kind of help propel you onto your career path?
Yeah, my time in Tuscaloosa was really the foundation of everything. I spent 3 years in the athletic communications office as a student assistant. And just through being able to work conference championships, whether it was ones that we were hosting in Tuscaloosa or the football championship game, basketball tournament. And really, it was the 95 regional that the SEC was hosting in Birmingham. And I volunteered to help out at that, doing typical things that you do. And I learned that they had an internship program, and there was one in media relations. So I applied for the internship, and I just got really, really lucky and got the internship. And 9 months into my internship at the time, Roy Kramer was the commissioner. And, I was doing my intern job and all the sports that I was doing. And we had one of our full time people, our assistant director, ended up deciding that he was going to leave to take another job. And it was, during the latter part of the year, it was right after he was doing women's basketball. And his last official event was our men's basketball tournament. So the Monday after our tournament, which is the Monday after Selection Sunday, the commissioner uh, called me into the conference room and asked me if I wanted to be promoted to full time. And I'm not even a year out of college, and I accepted right there on the spot. He told me, "You're the assistant director of media relations at the Southeastern Conference. Go do the job." And I really just had to. It was like I had to turn on a switch at that point. I had to go from being young to a professional.
Right.
And he saw something in me that I probably didn't even see. And Charles Bloom was my boss at the time over the department. So between he and Charles, they saw something in me, and I had to jump into the role and run from there because it was NCAA tournament time. So I had to
Right.
jump into, and ultimately it ended up being an all SEC Final Four, Tennessee and Georgia. And here I was 3 weeks in of doing the job, and here I am as the communications director for an all SEC national championship game for women's basketball. It was an unbelievable start, and it just kind of went from there.
It always seems like that too. Like, you're in the moment and you don't see your own greatness, but other people do. And I think that says a lot about you, and what other people are, they see that already at a young age for Scottie Rodgers, and then what goes from there.
Folks like, again, Roy Kramer, Mark Whitworth, Charles Bloom. It was actually Mark Whitworth that hired me because I actually started 2 weeks before Charles at the SEC, which was a unique thing. And as he was coming into the role, and just Brad Davis, who's no longer with us, there was just Mark Womack. There was so many people there at that office that just gave me an opportunity, and I look back on it, and I didn't even know it at the time. And I look back on it, and now I do know. I was just the second African American male to have a full time job in media relations in the history of the SEC. Arthur Trish being the first, who spent was at LSU back in the '80s and spent a lot of time in pro sports in the Atlanta area. It was, I didn't know that at that time, but I got into the business, and I quickly went to my first COSIDA that first year in '96 in Boston, and started meeting people, and whether it was within our conference or just other people I got to know. And then over the next couple of years, going to the convention and just being involved, and got on the social committee, which kind of fit me and who I am. And it just really kind of started evolving from there, and just started meeting people. And I had some really, really great opportunities at the SEC that really, to this day, if I didn't get to do the things that they entrusted me to do there, I wouldn't be where I am right now.
You've had such an accomplished career so far, Scotty, and you've been a true trailblazer in that regards. You were at the SEC office for 5 years. You then went and worked at the NCAA for 5 years, and then made stops at CBS Sports. You were at the Ivy Leagues for over 8 years, Tulane, the Sun Belt, and then now to the Cotton Bowl. Do you ever take a minute to look back and be like, looking at your path and just saying, wow, like, all these different areas that you've been a part of, and how you've grown in that respect?
To be a small town kid, and the fact that, I look at a lot of my experiences, but, I think about taking a job, going to Indianapolis, but then even going to a job that was in Manhattan. That was just never something that was on my screen. It was never something I thought that I could even accomplish or be wanting to do. But the fact that I could do that, it was amazing. And then, then the transition from there was difficult because got caught up in a corporate downsizing, and had to pivot because I lost my job in the middle of February. And in college athletics, they're not hiring a lot of people in the middle of February. So I had to do that. But then I was able to land the opportunity at the Ivy League, and that was another transformative time because I was able to not only lead a communications department there, but I was able to expand into other areas. And Sam, I know you serve on a committee, and then served as chair of your committee in Division III as on the men's basketball committee, and I got to serve on the D1 women's rowing committee. And
That's
I
right.
got to tell you, Sam, for a black kid from a small town in Alabama who can't swim to be elected chair, though I didn't really get to serve, to be on the women's rowing committee, working in the Ivy League, and then be elected chair of that committee. Like, I could never have put that start to that point. Like,
Right.
there's no direct line to figure that out, and I don't even know how I did it, to be totally honest. But that was a great opportunity for me. It was, I got there and did a number of different things while I was there, but that one in particular was just so outside of my box.
Right.
But it was something that was presented to me, and I felt like I needed to embrace it. And we were able to start a rowing championship for women's rowing there, and among the other things that we accomplished there. And it was just such a great experience. And I look back on it, and I still got some great friends that we still text each other every now and again, and we talk about rowing. And you know, it's a sport that I never thought I would get to know, and I've grown an affinity and an appreciation for it.
Now let's dig a little deeper and really get to know you. What makes you feel accomplished? I know it's a simple question, but just every day or just even long term, what makes you feel accomplished?
You know, it's affecting people in a positive way. I feel every day I try to wake up and do my job to the best ability. I've never been worried about the next job. I've never been worried about trying to climb a ladder of any type. I've never worried about trying to be a trailblazer, to be honest with you. I've just tried to every day get up and be the best person I can be, bring a positive energy, bring high energy, because when I bring high energy, for me, I feel like I can be the most effective person as a professional, as a friend, as a colleague, as someone in the community that people can look at and say, "Hey, here's a guy that can help out." I feel like I don't have a selfish bone. We all have some selfishness about us. I get that, but I do feel like that I try every day to help others. And in the last several years of my career, I feel like I've been trying to do that a lot more through the things I've done, involved with through COSIDA and things and some other aspects. Just some stuff that I did in my life and career that was away from work, that, makes me feel accomplished. I look back on, you know, a random experience I had in my life when I lived in Indianapolis. I was able to start a networking group. We called it the Friday Lunch Club, and it was a lot of fun. And it was a citywide networking group, and it was an idea that I took from something we did at the SEC and reshaped it, and it turned into something great in a 5 year run in Indianapolis. Never had that in my plans to do. Never had that in something to do. But it was something that happened, and it was a great experience, and I got some great memories from it, and made some great people and friends that I still are connected with to this day. So what motivates me is being good to people, and hopefully, in return, people can will be good to me.
And we're in a people business, right? And you are such a friend to all. But when I checked your Facebook page, man, almost 2,400 friends. So I know you have a lot of friends, but I have to ask, what is a relationship deal breaker for you when it comes to friendships?
you know, Not being authentic. You know, everybody's got differences. You're gonna have differences of opinions with friends. I don't have to agree with everything that you think as a friend. We may sit on the different side of the aisle on a lot of different things, but the bottom line is, are you authentic? And then also how you treat other people. If I get the sense that you're treating other people bad, now you may not treat me bad, but if I get a sense that you're treating somebody else bad, then
Right.
there's something bad in your personality. And maybe I should probably not be as close to you or maybe even
Associate it.
friends
Yeah.
with you. That's something that's really big to me because not every person everybody treats everybody differently. But when you see that negativity expanding out to other people, at some point it's going to come back to you, and it's probably
Right.
not going to be very good. So when you see that, that's kind of a deal breaker to say, you know what, maybe I should back off being that person's friend, or um, just kind of create some more separation, because that is that's tough for me, and that's tough for me to forget.
And I think it's tough too when you look at yourself, in your friendships and relationships with everybody else. And then sometimes it's like you don't get the same feeling from your own friends who you thought you may knew who they were, but they're not. And I guess one question, it's always, I think it's good for self assessment too. It's just like, what's like one thing that you think people misunderstand about you as a person? Like, not a negativity, but just like how maybe people um, could maybe misunderstand you as a person.
You know, I'm not a person that comes across very like I'm very sensitive, but I do have a sensitive side as far as how being perceived. And one things I say a lot. I manage my perception, not my reality, because
Right.
people in a lot of cases don't really care about what your reality is. They care. They do in many cases get their perception of you, and that's what they talk about, share with others, and they don't actually know who you are. And I think sometimes in my life and in the profession, I've had situations that's happened where people made a decision or saying something about me that was about my perception but wasn't my reality. And some of that affected me in a negative way, and I had to deal with it. But again, didn't no one cared that I had to deal with it. They just cared that they were trying to make a point and really didn't come down and have a conversation with me or have a very good understanding. So that's something that I feel like maybe that's misunderstood. I take a lot in. I'm not one to carry, I do carry my emotions on my sleeve a little bit, but I also have learned to temper it because of the situations that I've been in, especially professionally. Sam, I've come into this business and I've met a lot of people, but when I was traveling a lot of places in this profession, I was in a lot of rooms and a lot of tables and a lot of places where there were a lot of people that didn't look like me. And I had to start realizing and understanding that in the situations, whether it was in professional situations, personal situations. A lot of it happened. This happened through my time in Cosida. I've sat in those rooms and the things that I've done, and I probably have made some people uncomfortable sometimes with some of the stuff that I've been involved with, and we can talk about that a little bit too. But I've known that as I've gotten older that when you are the only person or one of the few in the room, you got to have a different lens. You got to look through, you're looking through stuff through a different lens, and you got to look at the situation and the scene and assess it in a different way. And a lot of people don't realize that. It's not something I talk about a lot or
Mhm.
or 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 make it into a big deal, but it's something that I've had to do for the better part of my career.
And it seems like too, like that shouldn't be you having to look through that lens. It should be the other way around, in my opinion. And I feel like, and I know you have, your own personal experiences, but like we have an issue in the sports information field, and even just college athletics, and we see it with the coaching hires and the lack of diversity, from the higher ups and administration, but also in our own field.
Absolutely.
How can we fix this issue with the lack of diversity and representation?
Well, as you know, Sam, I personally decided that I can't be the one sitting around just talking about it. When there was an opportunity back in the summer and the racial and social unrest that we were dealing with in the country, and we were dealing with, and you and I both know, our profession is not diverse at all, not nearly as diverse as it needs to be.
I
And
agree.
I knew at that point that we needed to do something as a profession, and we needed people to get on board, and we needed it at the highest level. And I had a conversation with Jessica Poole, who obviously you know very well, who's at Chicago State and is on the board, who's a great friend. And she and I approached, as you know, approached the board and said, look, we need to come up with an initiative, and we need to make sure that it is behind the board. The board is behind it. This is not, our her role and my role on the diversity and inclusion committee has been. I think we've done some great work as a committee, and that committee with the diverse skill set and diverse backgrounds of the people on it have done great work. But at that moment in time, it was time for the board to get behind something. And I kudos to you and everybody in the leadership and the staff, with their support to get behind that initiative. And my thing is that I feel like at this point in my career, it's my time to step up and stand up and try to help make a difference. Talk is cheap, and we got to get out of the talking. We got to get out of the doing. And we've been doing some things since June, July. We've been doing. You can see it, and I think it's important for people to see it. And it's not only important to see it from the people who look like me, but it's also important for people to see it from people who look like you. So, and our membership, I think that's really important, and projecting that out to the rest of college athletics and to the sports world. And I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just a bunch of black folks in COSI that started making a big stink about something. I wanted it to be broader than that. And you have to step outside of yourself. You have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and have some conversations. And you've been on some of those Zooms that we've been able to have. And I think it's really, you know, Jess and I were able to help get it started. And now Denise Thompson at the Big Sky is kind of taking the lead over the initiative while we continue to support and doing some things that we're doing. And I think together we're going to make a difference. And that's the biggest word, together. We can't do it. We can't
100%.
just have the black folks in our profession. We just
Right.
can't have folks that are white who want to do it. We have to do it together. And I think it's really, really important that we have done that. And we still got a long ways to go, but I don't want to discount what we've done, because what we've done up to this point is a lot more than what we were doing.
And it really felt like, this what happened this past summer was a pinnacle in society, with people really becoming woke to the idea of the change. And like you mentioned, like, it's not just, black and African Americans wanting the change. The white people need to make a change too, or, when it comes to hiring and, diversifying, a work group. And I guess, Scotty, like, what was your take on everything that was going on personally? From your perception, what happened in the summer, and it just feels different. As far as how people have responded, from the summer to now, and you're seeing more action, and I'm hopeful that we see change, not just in college athletics, but across the country and the world.
I think when everybody saw the various instances, everybody goes back to George Floyd, but there was a number of different things that happened. That one was probably the one that obviously continues to be the focal point of where people, the jump off point from where people go from. But I think being black, I think a lot of people, when they saw that, it hit them because they had their own version of something like that happen. Not that dramatic and tragic in somebody dying, but they've all had one incident or multiple incidents of the microaggressions that happen. And it just hit everybody in a different way. Because it was so public, I think it just woke up the whole country. I think we
Mhm.
were at a time where everybody was not so busy in their jobs, was at home, and just I think there was a lot of series of things that happened. I think if because of the pandemic and us being where we are and the way we were feeling at that time, and the combination of being at home, and we were all still busy at work, but we were able to probably be able to look at things a little differently because we wasn't so bogged down on everything we
Yeah,
do, especially in
slow
sports.
down.
It was slowed down a little bit. And I think about the combination of all that, and I just think it just hit everybody at the right time. You know, I haven't had any incident that comes anywhere close to anything like that happening. But I'll give you one incident that's minor and it's in but it says something to our profession. I was at a first and second round when I was at the Ivy League, and I was there representing the conference. Harvard was there. I went. I was helping out Harvard as the conference rep. Went to the communications directors meeting that morning. Came out of that meeting. Now I have on a credential that says my name with Harvard University on, and I have on an Ivy League sweatshirt. And I had some person who's white came up to me and asked me about information about one of the schools that was there, and that school was an HBCU. And they came up to me to ask me about information about them simply because I was black. I had on an Ivy League shirt and a credential that said my name and Harvard University on it. But they didn't even take 1 second to look to see who I was representing. Just assume because I was one of or the black guy in the communications meeting, I had to be from the HBCU. Now, luckily, I knew the person who I don't think was there, but I made some phone calls and helped resolve the issue or answer the question because I felt like it was not only my job as a communications person to help another communications friend, but it was my job as a black person to make sure that the school there who represents to represent itself well. So that was my job. And that's a minor story. I'm not trying to equal that to anything, but I use that to put that into our athletic communications context.
Right.
I can't tell you that was the first time that that's happened, and I can't tell you that's the last time that's happened. But that was one incident that I remember, and I always go back on and tell a quick story on because I had that happen a lot in my career, whether at various places, not just at that job at that place. And those are the things that we have to correct. That was a microaggression that probably wasn't meant to be negative. That person probably didn't mean to be that way, but we got to be better in that. And I think in this profession we have to do better across the board. We have to find everybody has to help people who don't have the perspective that I do. Maybe it's you, maybe it's a friend of yours. Hey, tell them to reach out to me, let's have a conversation, let me help you get the perspective. You can never sit in the shoes that I do, and I can never sit in your shoes. But if we have conversation and we have dialogue, we can have a better understanding so that the next time that happens to somebody else, I don't need me to correct that. I need the person standing next to me or next to that person who's white to correct that person so that it doesn't happen again.
Recently, I was reading the White Fragility book, and I learned a lot about the white privilege And it's those assumptions and those experiences that you've experienced that like you mentioned needs to stop and change. And I agree. I think there are definitely better days ahead. I'm hopeful that we're going to see a change in the look and a diverse group that we work in. And I just want to thank you, Scottie, for being a member of CASIDA's Racial and Social Justice Initiative Working Group and helping us, work towards CASIDA for change on that.
It's something that as we've continued to get into it, Sam, I've it's something that speaks a lot to me. It's like this organization is in a sea of change, and we were already seeing it with what we were doing in diversity and inclusion, which is going to live on. We've already seen it with some of the change that's been made through the initiative and the conversations. The COSIDA for Change page that we have on our site that is chock full of information and all the past webinars and podcasts and books and terminology and things that people can go to as a starting point. It's not a be all end all, but it's a place. And again, I just think the folks that who don't look like me and don't look like us that are in the profession that are taking steps and a stand and time out of their schedule in their lives to help make a difference. That's where I see the difference coming in. And we got a long way to go. And we need all levels of our profession. We need our veterans. We need our folks that are in the mid years of their career. And we need the young folks. We absolutely need the young people to be a part of this process. And we need it at all levels, in all divisions, and even to our friends across the border and our Canadian friends. We need everybody in our profession to get together because I think we can continue to be a leader. We've done some things already so far that I think that we're leading in, and I think we can continue to do so.
Along those lines, and a couple more questions. Talking about a change as far as the organization, and recently with CASIDA announcing their new governance structure and establishing different cabinets. You're a part of the Division I cabinet. What do you think this governance structure is doing now, and doing things right to have that representation from all the different groups, and how that will impact the organization long term?
Especially from the D1 cabinet, our D1 space is vast. It's not it's a challenge to put our arms around, and we've tried a couple of different ways previously to get our hands on it. And I think the cabinet from the D1 perspective is going to allow the group of us that are on the cabinet to fan out to all, via the conferences and then thus to the schools and figure out what's the common thread in Division 1 that's the issues. And what I'm starting to find in some of the earlier conversations I have, there's some common threads, but there's some big differences too. What someone is looking for who may be at the head of the department at a Power 5 school may be very different than a person who's the number 3 assistant at a school that doesn't have football in Division 1. So we need to figure out how we can integrate programming, integrate networking opportunities, for our Division 1 membership specifically that meets the needs of those different types of individuals at the different places and stages in their career. And I think that's what I want to hope that we do as a part of being a part of the D1 cabinet so that we can put our folks in the best possible position to grow, whether that's staying strictly within the profession of athletic communications, or if that's moving into positions that will put them in position to be deeper into the senior administration, to get into the senior associate, the deputy, and potentially the director of athletics chair. Because we should want our folks that came from our background to continue to elevate and get in those big chairs. The more of our SID friends that we have in that chair, the more we're going to have advocates talking for us, about us, and supporting us at all stages and all levels. And that's what I want to see from what we're going to do as a part of the cabinet and help the government structure. And it's just going to make the organization stronger. And that's where it's all about. It's about making the total organization stronger. And we need to do that by helping make Division One stronger.
Well, I want to close out this interview, Scottie, with you just to get some fun with a couple questions here. I know how big of a Alabama fan you are, Roll Tide. But if you had to pick Paul Bryant or Nick Saban, who are you picking?
You know what? I don't think there's any question right now. It's Nick Saban. What he's done at Alabama, what he's done to affect college football, what he's done to evolve. You know, you go back and look at the first team at Alabama that won the national championship and this last team that won the national championship, the offense totally different. And he's done it with a carousel of coaching changes at coordinator positions. He's done it in a culture and a space that is a lot different. He's done it in a culture and a space where the student athletes have a lot different needs than, I mean, look, the Bear will always be the Bear. I think we got to stop trying to compare people to the Bear. We got to put him off to the side. Is that he's the man. You know, he just let him be. But, you know, I think if you have to look at what Saban has done from the standpoint of winning in the age in which he's had to win and as often as he's done it in the way in which he's done it, you got to get compared. But, you know, the Bear's the Bear.
I got you on that. And then if you had to pick who would be the best Alabama football team or what years would you pick? It seems like this last year was pretty diesel, but what team is the best Alabama football team?
You know, that is a huge debate. And I will, you know, you go with the one that you remember the best. And I got to go with the 92 team because that was the team. That was my first year working
Gene Stallings.
And Gene Stallings. That was my first year working in athletic communications. I was a sophomore in school. And I was able to go to the game thanks to my boss, Larry White. And I can tell, I tell people this story, and it's a short one. I was able to be at the game. Everybody knows the game, the Alabama, Miami, and Gino Torretta was the Heisman Trophy winner, and Alabama had this vaunted defense and not so great offense, and they went there and they just shut them down. But the last 8 minutes of that game, I stood on the sidelines at the Superdome, and that was January 1st, 1993. And I remember when the game's over and you see that iconic image of Gene Stallings on the shoulders, and I was standing in the background. You can't really see me. There's like a clip of it where you can see a little bit of my face, like for an uber second. And I'm looking up at the Superdome Jumbotron, and I'm like seeing myself. And I just knew at that moment, I was like, okay, I don't understand exactly what this whole profession about. This is kind of cool. So I think this might be it. And I just remember I think about that moment, and then the fast forward all the years down the road to actually work for the Sun Belt, which office is in the Superdome. So they actually have a job that was in the Superdome. You know, all those years later, was a unique kind of 360 in a way. But it's that 92 team is something that I won't forget. And those memories, just going to some of those games and being in the press box, being at the first SEC championship game, and then being at that national championship. It's an experience that I probably won't ever be able to replicate because I'm not that young anymore. But fortunately, Alabama's had a lot of great teams.
There you go. Everything's coming full circle, and it's great to see what you're doing currently with the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic, Scottie. And just really want to thank you for your time today, and for sharing your story on this latest edition of Casaida's Through My Lens. Reminder to learn more about Casaida's racial and social justice initiative and to listen to previous Through My Lens podcasts, head over to casaida.com/Through My Lens. Scottie, thanks again so much for your time today.
Sam, thanks for being here and thanks for this interview. And I really appreciate you and everything that you do.
Take care.